Thank you for joining us online. At Mission Gathering, we welcome all to Christ's table. If you are Asian, Hispanic, Black, or white, if you are male or female, trans or non-binary, if you are 3 days old, 30 years old, or 103 years old, if you've never stepped foot in a church, or if you are Buddhist, Roman Catholic, agnostic, or a lifelong evangelical, if you are single, married, divorced, separated, or partnered, if you are straight, gay, lesbian, or bisexual, if you are a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, a socialist, or not registered to vote, if you have or have had addictions, phobias, abortions, or a criminal record, if you own your own home or rent, live with your parents, or are homeless, if you are fully able, disabled, or a person of differing abilities, you are welcome here.
At this moment, you may feel the full weight of chaos and stress. Take this time with us to turn inward and connect to your innermost you. Gently close your eyes and feel the rhythm of breath inside your body as you repeat these words. My deepest me is love. My deepest me is whole. My deepest me is limitless. My deepest me is infinite. My deepest me is compassion. My deepest me is sacred. My deepest me is mystery. My deepest me is forgiveness. My deepest me is beauty. My deepest me is God. My deepest me has knowledge to give. I open my heart and listen. Peace be with you.
My vision, ooh, love of my heart. Nothing else satisfies, only you, Lord. You are my best thought by day or by night. Waking or sleeping, your presence, my life. You are my wisdom, you are my true word. I ever with you and you with me, Lord. You're like a mother, we are daughters and sons. You dwell inside us, together we're one. I don't want riches or man's empty praise. You're my inheritance now and always. You and you only, the first in my heart. High King of heaven, my treasure, you are. High King of heaven, the victory's won. May I reach heaven's joy, oh bright heaven's sun. Heart of my own heart, whatever befall, still be my vision, ruler of You are my vision, ooh, love of my heart. Nothing else satisfies, only you, Lord. You are my best start by day or by night. Waking or sleeping, your presence, my life. Waking or sleeping, your presence, my life.
Did you ever grow up hearing people say things like, prayer works, it's scientifically proven? Or they would have t-shirts or mugs that said that phrase on it, like, prayer works. And as much as there's been fights about keeping prayer in schools or who should pray before government meetings, if we're really honest, I don't think most of the US knows how prayer even works. And I don't think that most of our country even knows how to pray. I mean, for the most part, the prayers that we've been taught by religion, whether they be extemporaneous or whether they be prescripted for us, they're all pretty much the same. They're trying to get the attention of a God that seems distant and aloof, and then they're trying to control that God into doing what we want, right? Like as if God's waiting for enough prayers from the prayer chain to come in so that poor old Betsy can get healed from whatever illness she has this week. That doesn't really sound like the God that I want to worship. And that doesn't really sound like the God that I see in the Bible. That sounds like the kind of God that makes it easy for our ego to manipulate. Like if God is just making a list and checking it twice to find out who's naughty or nice, then what's the point of prayer? Because we know that every kid that gets on Santa's lap at the mall is going to get those presents, even if they weren't nice to their brother and sister. In a lot of our prayer lives, we treat God like Santa Claus. And then I think that's why so many of us stop praying. It's because when we begin to see God as more than Santa Claus, or when we don't get the things that we ask for in the way that we ask for them immediately how we wanted them, then we begin to see that God maybe isn't a cosmic vending machine that just gives us all the things that we think we want. And so prayer becomes hard. Or maybe it was more serious than that. Maybe you were told if you had enough faith and you prayed hard enough, that loved one wouldn't die. Or that relationship would stay together. Or your kids wouldn't go away. Or whatever it is, that big bad that came into your life, that suffering, maybe you were told if you just prayed about it, that God would take it away, or God would just make it all better. We just have this idea that prayer is like this functional thing, that you plug it in and it fixes stuff. But that's all ego. That's all of us trying to figure out and work things out in this world. Because we built a shield around who we truly are. We've built up our ego around us to protect us from the outside world, and we use that ego to protect us and keep God distanced from us. That's why so many of us have left religion. We followed the rules and we put in the time, and it didn't work out how they said it was going to work out. We didn't get those things that we wanted. And this slide, right? This slide talks about that. You see that there's a circle with you, and then there's God. You see, in most religion, the idea of the self, the false self, and God are there. It's always about one of us trying to get back to God, that God is distanced and we got to do something to get to God. But the real truth is that your true self is of God. Your true self is in God, and that God is within, around, and in you at all times. That you were never anything apart from God. You can't separate yourself and God, because the true you, the real you, the only you that exists in God. So if God is in us and around us and with us all the time, why should we pray? People stop praying when they come to that conclusion too, that if God's here, why do we pray? And well, my answer is we shouldn't. At least we shouldn't pray the way that we've been taught to pray. If your true self exists in God and is of God and so on, and if the false self and the ego keeps us from seeing that, then true prayer is the kind of prayer that Paul invokes and that John invokes and that James invokes and that even Jesus invokes and so many others throughout the history of our faith talk about. It's a prayer that is one of the ways to break down the ego and the false self and to grow an awareness of our true identity in God. Prayer is one of the ways that we can break down our ego, that we can begin to realize that God is here, God is present, God is with us, and that we are in God, find our one true identity. The only other way to break out of that ego is suffering. One of the ways that we break down our ego, that we get past our false self, to live into our true self, is prayer. The only other way to get out of your false self and into your true self is to have a God moment that usually comes with suffering. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty American and I don't like suffering a lot. So maybe there's something that can be learned in contemplative, prayerful action. So contemplative prayer helps us wake up from the dream or the nightmare that ego had us sleepwalking in for way too long. In 1 Thessalonians 5:6, Paul says this, "So then let's not sleep like the others, but let's stay awake and stay sober." Now, Paul's not telling you not to have a beer, and he's not telling you to take a nap. He's talking about a deeper spiritual thing, about waking up to a real world, waking up to the true existence of living in God and God living in you, the Christ reality, the deeper reality that Jesus came to show. Contemplative practice in prayer is the way that Jesus and his early followers prayed. It's the way that Paul was trying to teach these new churches to pray. It's putting to death the false self. John 12:24. I assure you that unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it can only be a single seed. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. You see, we spend all of this time, like Brian McLaren talked about it, we spend all this time in these first stages trying to build up who we think we are and who we think God is, and playing by all the rules and doing all the right things. And we pile that on top of all this stuff, and then we get to a point where it just stops working. So we start burning all of it down. We start tearing all of that away. But we don't ever work on the ego part. We don't ever work on the us part. Or at least I don't see a lot of people doing it. So often what we do is the work of like, well, that church stuff isn't good, and that person over there is false, and I'm just going to give up on all of these other things. And we don't ever work on us, the true us, and begin to see who we are. And if we're going to build a community of harmony, we have to do that work. We have to work on us. Father Thomas Keating once said it this way: if you stay on the spiritual journey long enough, the practices that sustained your faith will fall short. When this happens, it can be very disillusioning. But if we stay on the journey, that this is actually an invitation to go deeper with God. Contemplative prayer, or what people in the 1st and 2nd century just called prayer, it's an invitation to go deeper with God. It's also an invitation to go deeper into your true self, to disconnect from all of the things that you've built up, all the falsehoods, all the stuff other people have put on you too. It's an invitation to go deeper, an invitation to be present and awake in your own life, your life now, your life here, your life in God. The only life that exists is your life here and now in God. Your contemplative prayer, that it is a dying of your ego so that you may find that true life now. The ancients and the contemplatives and the mystics all talk about how silence was the first language of God. And as scary as it can be to be silent, that is where our practice of prayer has to begin. Back to the beginning. Back to the original voice of God. That still small voice. So before you take off, before you click to go watch the next thing or to do whatever it is you got to do today, we're going to go into a moment of a prayer that can help you connect to yourself, help you connect to your true self, to enter into that space where it is you and God in the silence. We're just going to do 3 minutes today. But over the next few weeks, if you make this practice 20 minutes twice a day, I guarantee you that there's going to be a lot of things that are changing in your life, a lot of things that will be happening because of that practice. But today, if you can just do 3 minutes with us, maybe God has something to tell you in the silence. So get to a space where you're comfortable. You can sit on the floor with crossed legs. You can sit in a chair with feet planted on the floor, using the best posture which you are able to, the most comfortable. Be still. Closing your eyes, take deep, cleansing breaths in and out. In and out. Follow these words. Repeat these words after me as your mantra, as your chant, as your prayer, whichever words you're comfortable with. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Breathe. Be still and know that I am. Be still.